Can you survive when the person who promised to love you is planning your funeral? Claire did. While pregnant with triplets and dying from heart failure, she overheard her husband's plan: let her die, collect 8 million, start fresh with his mistress. But Claire recorded everything. She fought back. And when a mysterious billionaire arrived claiming to be her father, everything changed. If you're ready for a story about betrayal, survival, and perfect revenge, like this video, drop a comment and subscribe. Because this woman, she refused to stay dead. Let's go. The night Claire Westwood went into labor, her husband was not holding her hand. He was calculating how much her death was worth. The elevator doors opened to the private maternity floor at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan. Claire lay on a gurney, eyes half open, skin the color of old parchment, one hand gripping her swollen belly like she was holding 3 small lives inside with pure will alone. Her monitor screamed. Her blood pressure crashed. The nurse kept saying, "Stay with me, sweetheart. Stay with me." But Claire could barely hear her. Everything sounded like it was underwater, distant and muffled, as if she were drowning in slow motion. Her husband, Derek Ashford, did not even look scared. He looked annoyed. He adjusted the cuff of his expensive Brioni suit like he was about to walk into a Park Avenue boardroom, not into an operating room where his wife might die on the table. His phone lit up with messages, and he kept typing, his thumbs moving with the practiced ease of a man who had done this 1,000 times before. The blue glow illuminated his face, cold and detached, highlighting the sharp angles of his jaw, the thin line of his mouth. He was not texting family. He was texting his girlfriend. How long he typed, his fingers barely pausing. Vanessa texted back immediately. "Baby, I'm already in the VIP lounge. Bring me good news." Good news, meaning Claire does not make it. That was the plan. Claire knew it. That was the worst part, knowing and being powerless to stop it. 3 hours earlier, when the first contraction hit so hard she almost dropped to the kitchen floor of their Central Park West penthouse, she heard Derek in the next room. He was on speakerphone. He forgot she could hear him, or maybe he did not care anymore. He said, very calm, very businesslike, the way he spoke to his investors, "The policy pays out 8 million if she does not survive. After that, the kids are mine and we are clear. No more stress, no more complications. $8 million. He was talking about his wife like she was an expired contract, a bad investment that needed to be liquidated. He was talking about his own children, 3 unborn daughters, like assets to be acquired in a hostile takeover. Claire had stood there in shock. One hand on the cold marble counter, one hand on her belly where the babies kicked and turned, oblivious to the danger circling them. Her heart had felt like it was tearing, and not just from the pregnancy, from the peripartum cardiomyopathy that was slowly killing her, from betrayal that went down to the bone, that made her question every smile, every kiss, every promise Derek had ever made. Now that same heart was failing. The doctor said her condition was rare and dangerous. Peripartum cardiomyopathy. Your heart is tired, she had told Claire gently 2 weeks ago, her eyes full of professional concern mixed with something deeper, something personal. If we do not move fast, you and the babies are both at risk. The mortality rate is 30%. Do you understand what that means? Claire had nodded, her throat too tight to speak. She knew the truth. She knew she might not wake up from the surgery, but she had one last request, one final act of maternal love. "Promise me," she whispered now, dragging air into her lungs with effort. Save my girls, even if I cannot come back. Promise me they will live." The nurse, a kind woman named Rita Hayes with graying hair and gentle hands, squeezed Claire's fingers. "We will do everything we can, honey, everything." Derek did not move. He did not offer comfort or reassurance. He was already walking away, already pushing open the door to the VIP family room where Vanessa waited inside. She wore a fitted black dress that hugged her curves, diamonds at her throat that caught the fluorescent light, red lipstick perfectly applied. She was pretending to be the new Mrs. Ashford, practicing for a role she expected to claim within hours. Vanessa looked up and smiled like a winner, like someone who had just closed the deal of a lifetime. She lifted her glass of champagne, the bubbles catching the light, and said softly, almost laughing, "To new beginnings, to freedom, to finally getting what we deserve." Claire heard that laugh through the doors as they rolled her towards surgery. She closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners, trailing down into her hair. In that moment, Claire Westwood understood something like ice settling in her veins, cold and clarifying. She was not dying from pregnancy complications. She was being erased on purpose, eliminated like a line item in a budget report. And if this was her last hour on Earth, she was not leaving quietly, because someone else was already on their way to the hospital, someone Derek did not know existed, someone he could not manipulate or control, someone who did not lose. And when he walked in, everything Derek built on Claire's blood would start to burn. 72 hours before the delivery, the penthouse on Central Park West looked peaceful. Too peaceful. The kind of peace that comes before a storm. Heavy and expectant. The rain outside the floor-to-ceiling windows traced long lines down the glass. The sound soft and constant. Almost like a heartbeat. Almost like a countdown. Claire Westwood was folding the last set of tiny onesies in the nursery they had spent months preparing. The room was painted a soft lavender, with white furniture and clouds stenciled on the ceiling. 3 cribs stood in a row, each with a small stuffed animal already waiting. She had chosen them carefully. A lamb for Emma, a bunny for Grace, a teddy bear for Sophie, all white with little clouds on them. Matching the theme, she smiled faintly, talking to her belly as she had done for months now, her voice soft and musical. "We are almost there, my loves. Mommy just needs a little more time. Just a few more days and I will get to hold you, to see your faces, to count your tiny fingers and toes." Her back hurt with a deep, persistent ache that no amount of pillows could ease. Her ankles were swollen, her feet barely fitting into her slippers anymore. But she was glowing in that quiet, tired way mothers do before birth, her skin luminous despite the exhaustion, her eyes bright with anticipation mixed with fear. In the living room, Derek was pacing with his laptop open on the Italian marble coffee table, the screen full of red numbers and declining graphs. He looked like a man staring at his own downfall, his carefully constructed empire crumbling in real time. His hair, usually perfectly styled, was disheveled from running his hands through it. His shirt was wrinkled, tie loosened. There were dark circles under his eyes. "Derek," Claire said softly, walking into the room with one hand supporting her lower back. "Can you help me pack the hospital bag? I want to make sure we have everything ready." He did not answer. He was too busy on a call, his voice rising with frustration. Through the speaker, a man's voice said coldly, "If the investment does not close by Friday, you will default. Derek, the SEC investigations is moving forward. You will lose everything. Your firm, your reputation, everything you have built." Derek rubbed his temple, his jaw clenched, so tight Claire could see the muscle jumping. "I will find a way. I always do. I just need more time." "You are out of time," the voice said, and the line went dead. Claire had no idea that the way Derek planned to find money meant her life, that she had become, in his mind, a solution to his problems rather than the woman he had promised to love and cherish. After the call, he slammed his laptop shut with such force Claire flinched. He turned to her, his eyes hard and cold, like looking at a stranger. "You should rest. You are stressing me out just standing there." She blinked, confused and hurt. "I am stressing you out." "Yeah," he snapped, his voice sharp enough to cut. "You are not the only one under pressure." "Claire, do you think money grows on trees? Do you have any idea what it costs to maintain this lifestyle? The penthouse, the cars, the private schools we will need for the girls. Do you think that just happens?" "I never asked for any of that," Claire said quietly, her voice shaking. I just wanted our family." He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair, his movements jerky and aggressive. "Well, maybe that is not enough anymore." He stormed out, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. She stood there for a long moment, one hand on her stomach where the babies were moving, agitated by the tension, by the elevated cortisol flooding Claire's system. She whispered to them to stay calm, to be patient, that everything would be okay even though she was no longer sure that was true. Then her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter, a calendar notification she did not remember setting. Lunch at Soho House. 1:30 p.m. D plus V. Her heart froze. Weisfile. Vanessa. She knew the name. She had seen it on his phone before. Saved under client with no other information. She had asked about it once, and Derek had explained smoothly that Vanessa Rhodes was his new PR consultant, hired to help rebrand the firm after some negative press. Nothing to worry about, just business. But this did not look like business. By 1 o'clock, Claire was sitting in her Honda, parked across the street from Soho House in the meatpacking district. She felt ridiculous, like a character in a bad movie, spying on her own husband. But she had to know. She had to see with her own eyes whether her instincts, her growing sense of dread, were justified or just pregnancy hormones making her paranoid. The way Derek kept suggesting. She watched through the rain-smeared windshield, her hands gripping the steering wheel. Derek arrived first in his Navy suit, looking like the successful investment banker he was supposed to be. He stood under the awning, checking his phone, completely at ease. Vanessa appeared minutes later, emerging from a black town car, red coat, perfect hair blown out in salon waves, heels clicking like applause against the wet pavement. She was beautiful in that polished, expensive way, the kind of beauty that came from personal trainers and dermatologists and knowing exactly how to present yourself. She leaned in to kiss him on the cheek. Not quick, not friendly. Her hand lingered on his arm. Too close, too long, too familiar. Claire's throat burned. She wanted to scream, to jump out of the car and confront them both right there on the street. But no sound came out. She just watched, paralyzed, as they disappeared inside. She waited 10 minutes, then walked in herself, her pregnant belly making her waddle slightly, making her feel huge and ungainly and invisible. She found a seat in the back corner, partially hidden by a decorative screen, where she could see their table, but they could not see her. Inside, the waiter poured wine for both of them. Pinot Noir, Derek's favorite. Vanessa laughed at something he said, her hand reaching across the table to brush his fingers. The gesture was intimate, practiced, the kind of touch that spoke of history, of repetition, of comfort. "So, when does it happen?" Vanessa asked, her voice low but carrying in the quiet restaurant. Derek leaned back, swirling his wine glass. "Tomorrow night, after the C-section, her condition is serious enough that complications are expected. The policy will trigger immediately. And the kids, neonatal care is already paid for through the hospital. After that, they are mine. Full custody. No one to question my decisions." Vanessa's eyes sparkled with something that looked like hunger. "Then we are finally free. We can stop pretending. We can stop sneaking around. We can actually have the life we have been planning." "Exactly," Derek said, and he smiled. Not the smile he used to give Claire, but something colder, sharper, more calculating. 8 million in insurance plus the trust fund my parents set up for the girls. I will be their legal guardian, which means I control everything. We will be more than comfortable. "What about that friend of hers, Jenna?" Vanessa asked, her brow furrowing slightly. "She has been asking questions." "Jenna Palmer is a journalist, not a detective," Derek said dismissively. "She suspects things, but she cannot prove anything. By the time she figures it out, it will be too late. Claire will be gone, and I will be the grieving widower, untouchable." Claire covered her mouth, tears spilling over her fingers, her whole body shaking, her vision blurred. She felt like she was going to vomit, to pass out, to disappear right there in the restaurant. She started the car and drove away before they could see her, before she could do something stupid, something that might put her babies at risk. That night, she confronted him, the confrontation every betrayed woman dreams about but never wants to live. She waited until he came home at 10, smelling of wine and Vanessa's perfume. He loosened his tie, poured whiskey into his crystal glass like he owned the world, like he had not just spent the afternoon planning his wife's murder. "Who is Vanessa Rhodes?" Claire asked quietly, standing in the doorway of the living room, backlit by the kitchen light. Derek froze, his hand halfway to his mouth. "What? Do not play stupid," Claire said, open, her voice stronger than she felt. "I saw you. I heard everything. The insurance policy, the plan, all of it." He smirked. That cold, arrogant smile of a man who believes he is untouchable, who has never faced real consequences in his privileged life. You should not have followed me, Claire. That is not healthy for you or the babies. You are being paranoid, hormonal. You planned it, she whispered, her voice breaking. You actually planned my death, like it was just another business transaction. Derek shrugged, sipping his drink, the ice clinking against the glass. Do not be dramatic. You are sick. Claire, you might not survive anyway. The doctors said 30% mortality rate. I am just being practical, making sure the girls are taken care of, making sure I am not left with nothing. He set his glass down with a sharp click against the marble. If anything happens, it is not my fault. It is just life, just bad luck. But at least the kids will be taken care of. And Vanessa, she will make a great mother, better than you could be in your condition. Her legs nearly gave out. She clutched the doorframe to stay upright, her knuckles white with the effort. He walked past her, so close she could smell the whiskey and betrayal thick in the air. Oh, and Claire, he added, turning back at the bedroom door, his expression almost bored. Do not embarrass yourself at the hospital tomorrow. I have already arranged everything. The doctors know what to do. Just go quietly. And everyone will remember you as a hero who gave her life for her children. Is that not what every mother wants? The door slammed. The echo lingered, bouncing off the high ceilings of their expensive prison. For the first time, Claire was not scared of dying. She was scared of leaving her daughters in the hands of monsters. And in that fear, something inside her hardened. Not hate, not anger, but a cold, sharp will to survive. Because if Derek had made his plans, then so would she, and her plan would end with his name burned into ash. She pulled out her phone and called the one person she trusted. Jenna, she said when her best friend answered. I need your help, and I need it now. Morning light crept through the blinds, pale and cold, like a dying star. Claire Westwood sat on the edge of her bed, both hands pressed against her chest where her heart hammered too fast, too loud, like a trapped bird desperate to escape. She had barely slept 3 hours. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Derek and Vanessa at that table, whispering about insurance money over red wine, toasting to her death like it was something to celebrate. By the time she reached Mount Sinai Hospital for her final checkup at 9 in the morning, she could barely stand without support. The nurse at the front desk saw her face, saw the way she was swaying on her feet, and ran for help without even checking her in first. Dr. Margaret Sullivan appeared almost instantly, moving with the swift efficiency of someone who had seen enough emergencies to know when seconds mattered. She was in her 50s, with silver streaks in her dark hair and calm, intelligent eyes that did not miss a single detail. Those eyes took in Claire's color, her breathing, the way she was holding herself like she might shatter. She helped Claire into a wheelchair, then into an examination room, checking her vitals with practiced hands. The blood pressure cuff tightened and released. The numbers made Dr. Sullivan's professional mask slip for just a moment, revealing genuine concern underneath. Your blood pressure is dangerously unstable, Dr. Sullivan said softly, her voice measured and calm in the way doctors use to keep patients from panicking. 180 over 110, and your heart is under too much strain. The echocardiogram shows your ejection fraction is down to 30%. Carrying triplets is hard enough on a healthy heart. But with peripartum cardiomyopathy in this stage, you are in immediate danger, both you and the babies. I just want them safe, Claire interrupted, her voice thin but firm, her hands protectively cradling her belly. Whatever happens to me, just save them. Please. Dart. Sullivan studied her for a long second. There was something in the young woman's face, courage mixed with quiet despair. That reminded her of someone she once knew, a sister, lost to a man's violence, to a system that did not protect her in time. I am admitting you tonight, the doctor said, her tone leaving no room for argument. No negotiations. You need constant monitoring until delivery. We are scheduling your C-section for tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. That gives us 24 hours to stabilize you as much as possible. Claire nodded, relief and terror mixing in equal measure. She did not argue. She had already packed her own bag the night before. After calling Jenna, not because she expected care, but because she expected war, and she had prepared accordingly. When Derek arrived that evening at 7, he looked annoyed again. Not worried. He carried a leather folder in his hand, sleek in blue, stamped with the logo of a medical authorization service. He walked in like he owned the room, like the hospital was just another acquisition to be managed. "What is that?" Claire asked, eyeing the folder with suspicion. "Paperwork," he said smoothly, his voice the one he used with investors. Reasonable, trustworthy, completely false. "Routine stuff in case you are unconscious during surgery, medical power of attorney, standard procedure for high-risk deliveries." He placed a tablet in front of her, the screen already lit up and displaying a document. The page was already open. Her name typed neatly at the top in an elegant font. Medical power of attorney. Derek Ashford. The signature line was blank. Waiting. Her hand trembled as she picked up the device. "I never signed this before." "You must have forgotten." He lied smoothly, not even blinking. "We did it online weeks ago when you first got diagnosed. Remember the lawyer sent the link? You were so tired that day. You probably do not recall." Dr. Sullivan entered the room at that exact moment, as if she had been listening outside. "Excuse me, Mr. Ashford, we need to run another scan. Hospital policy requires the patient to be examined alone before any legal documents are discussed." Derek forced a smile that did not reach his eyes. "Sure, doctor. I will just wait outside." Then he leaned close to Claire, his mouth near her ear, his voice low and sharp enough to cut. "Do not make this difficult. You are already making me look bad in front of the staff. Just sign the damn form and stop being dramatic." When he left, closing the door behind him with excessive care, Dr. Sullivan turned to Claire. She noticed the way the younger woman's fingers dug into the bedsheet, the way her whole body had gone rigid. "You are shaking," Dr. Sullivan said gently, sitting in the chair Derek had vacated. "Is it pain or something else?" Claire hesitated, her throat working. Then the words came out in a rush, like a dam breaking. "He forged my signature on insurance documents, life insurance, $8 million. He wants me to die on that table tomorrow. He has been planning it." Dr. Sullivan's eyes darkened with something cold and dangerous. "That is illegal and cruel. And if what you are saying is true, it is also attempted murder." Claire gave a bitter smile, tears leaking from the corners of her eyes. "He does not see me as a person anymore. Just a policy waiting to expire. Just an obstacle to remove." Dr. Sullivan sat beside her, taking Claire's cold hand in both of her own warm ones. "Listen to me, Claire. I have seen men like him before. Polished on the outside, rotten underneath. Narcissists who view people as objects to be used. You are not alone. Okay, whatever happens, I will be here. I will protect you." Claire swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper. "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." Dr. Sullivan paused before answering, her gaze distant for a moment. "Because once, a long time ago, I could not help someone I cared about. My younger sister. She was married to a man like your husband. He put her in the hospital 3 times. The 4th time, she did not leave. And I was not there. I was in medical school. Too busy. Too far away. I have lived with that guilt for 25 years. Something flickered behind Dr. Sullivan's composed face. A memory too painful to speak aloud. A wound that had never fully healed. "You remind me of her she continued. "The same strength hiding under the fear. The same determination to protect others even when you are the one who needs protecting. So no, I will not let another woman die on my watch when I have the power to prevent it." That night, Claire could not sleep. The machines beside her hummed softly, a mechanical lullaby that offered no comfort. Through the small hospital window, she could see the Manhattan skyline glowing like a sea of diamonds against the dark sky. Beautiful, distant, untouchable. She reached for her phone, the screen casting blue light across her face, and started recording a video. Her voice was shaky but clear, determined to leave something behind in case Derek's plan succeeded. "If I do not make it," she said, looking directly into the camera, "please show this to my daughters when they are old enough to understand. Tell them I loved them before I even saw their faces. Tell them I fought to be their mother until the very end. Tell them their father is a monster, and that is not their fault. Tell them they deserved better. Tell them I am sorry I could not protect them the way I wanted to." She paused, wiping tears with the back of her hand, smearing them across her cheeks. "Emma, Grace, Sophie, my three hearts beating outside my body. I love you. I love you. I love you. Remember that. Whatever happens, remember your mother loved you enough to die for you." She pressed save. The file uploaded automatically to a cloud drive, one Derek could never access, one linked to Jenna's email with instructions to open it only if Claire did not survive. Outside her door, Dr. Sullivan stood in the hospital corridor, speaking quietly to someone on the phone, her voice low and urgent. "She does not know it yet," she said. "But I think I found her father. His name is Robert Callahan. He has been searching for her for months. And if what he told me is true, then Derek Ashford has no idea what is about to hit him." The next morning arrived too fast and too slow at the same time. Claire woke at 5 to find her best friend Jenna Palmer sitting by her bedside, exactly where she had promised to be. Jenna was an investigative journalist for the New York Times, and she looked like she had not slept either. Dark circles under her eyes, coffee cup in hand, laptop open and surrounded by papers and folders that covered every available surface. "You look terrible," Claire said weakly, trying for humor and failing. "So do you," Jenna replied with a faint smile that did not reach her eyes. "But at least I am not about to give birth to triplets while my husband plans my funeral. So I think you win the Who Has It Worse contest today." Claire tried to laugh, but it came out as a sob that she quickly tried to swallow. Jenna immediately grabbed her hand, squeezing hard. Hey, listen to me. I have been digging all night. Deep digging. The kind that gets my editor nervous. And I found something big. Really big." She turned the laptop around so Claire could see the screen. It was filled with financial reports, corporate filings, bank statements with numbers highlighted in yellow, and a scanned insurance document that made Claire's stomach drop. "Derek's firm, Ashford and Klein Investments, is $12 million in debt," Jenna explained, her journalist voice kicking in, clear and factual. "The SEC is investigating him for fraud, specifically for running a Ponzi scheme with client funds. He took money from new investors to pay returns to old investors. Classic pyramid structure. It collapsed 3 months ago when the crypto market crashed." She scrolled down, showing more documents. "He has been hiding it from everyone. His partners, his clients, you. He took out an $8 million life insurance policy on you 6 months ago, right when the investigation started. You never signed it. Look at the signature. I had a handwriting expert analyze it. It is a forgery." Claire stared at the screen, her vision blurring as she tried to focus on the signature that was supposed to be hers but was not. The loops all wrong, the pressure uneven. 8 million. "That is not all," Jenna continued, clicking to another tab. "Vanessa Rhodes is not just his mistress. She is not even really a PR consultant. That is a cover. She has 3 outstanding warrants in 3 different states: Florida, Nevada, and California. Fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement. She is a professional con artist. She targets wealthy men in financial trouble, promises to help them, then bleeds them dry." Another click. Photos appeared. Vanessa with different men, different names, different cities. Each one looking successful, confident, and completely unaware they were being played. "She targeted Derek because she thought he had money," Jenna explained. "She did not know he was already bankrupt. So now they are both trapped, both desperate, both willing to do anything to get that insurance payout." Claire's hands shook as she reached for the water cup on the bedside table, nearly dropping it. "So they are both desperate." "Exactly, Piton," Jenna said, her eyes hard with the kind of anger that comes from seeing injustice clearly, which makes them dangerous. Desperate people do desperate things. "Claire B., you need to get out of here. Cancel the surgery. Go somewhere safe, somewhere Derek cannot find you." "I cannot," Claire whispered, her hand moving protectively to her belly. "The babies. My heart. Dr. Sullivan said if I wait too long, we all die. My ejection fraction is down to 30%. Normal is 55 to 70. My heart is failing. Jenna, there is no more time." Jenna's jaw tightened, her reporter mask slipping to show the terrified friend underneath. "Then we document everything. Every single thing. I am not leaving your side, and I am bringing a camera, multiple cameras, audio recorders, everything. That afternoon, while Claire dozed fitfully, Jenna set up a small recording device in the hospital room, hidden inside a cheerful flower arrangement that the hospital volunteers had brought. She also contacted an attorney she had worked with on previous investigations, Miles Crawford, a family law specialist who owed her a favor from a case where her reporting had exposed a corrupt family court judge. Miles arrived within the hour, his presence immediately calming. He was in his 50s, with gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He carried a leather briefcase and moved with the kaiso kind of calm authority that made people listen, that made them trust. "Mrs. Ashford," he said, shaking Claire's hand gently, careful not to disturb the ivy line. "I have reviewed all the documents your friend provided. I need to be very clear with you. Your husband has committed multiple felonies, forgery, insurance fraud, and potentially conspiracy to commit murder." Claire's breath caught in her throat. "Murder." Miles nodded gravely, his expression serious. "If he is deliberately withholding medical care, making decisions designed to cause your death, or creating conditions where your death becomes likely, yes, that is felony murder under New York state law. It carries a sentence of 25 years to life." He pulled out a legal document from his briefcase. "Already prepared, already notarized. I have filed an emergency motion with the Manhattan Family Court. Judge Helen Morrison granted it an hour ago. As of this moment, Derek Ashford no longer has any medical power of attorney over you. Dr. Sullivan is now your legal proxy. He cannot make any decisions about your care. He cannot even be in the operating room without your explicit written consent." For the first time in days, Claire felt something other than fear. She felt hope, fragile and tentative, but real. But hope is fragile, and Derek Ashford was not finished yet. That evening, just after 7, Derek returned to the hospital with his own lawyer, a slick corporate attorney named Gregory Hale, who wore a $3,000 suit and had a reputation for defending the indefensible. They stormed into Claire's room like an invading army, all aggressive confidence and barely controlled rage. "What is this?" Derek demanded, waving a court document he had clearly just been served. His face was red, a vein pulsing in his temple. "You filed against me, your own husband." "I protected by myself," Claire said quietly, surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "You forged my signature. You planned to let me die. What did you expect me to do?" Derek's face turned a deeper shade of red, the color of rage barely contained. "That is insane. That is paranoid delusion. I would never. I have been trying to help you. I have been making sure everything is arranged for the surgery." "We have recordings," Jenna interrupted, standing up from her chair in the corner, her phone in her hand like a weapon. "We have your phone calls, your text messages with Vanessa, your meetings with her, your discussions about the insurance policy, all of it, every word." Gregory Hale stepped forward smoothly, his voice oily with practiced confidence. "Any recordings obtained without proper consent are inadmissible in court. New York is a one-party consent state, but hospital recordings have specific regulations. Not if they are evidence of a crime being actively planned," Miles countered smoothly, standing up to face the other lawyer. "And conspiracy to commit insurance fraud is very much a crime, as is forgery, as is conspiracy to commit murder." Gregory Hale hesitated, his confidence faltering for just a moment. Derek, sensing weakness, turned to Claire with a look of mock hurt that would have been convincing if she had not seen the real him the night before. "How can you do this to me?" "Claire," he asked, his voice trembling with fake emotion, "after everything I have given you, after all the sacrifices I have made for our family, this is how you repay me by accusing me of trying to murder you." Claire met his eyes, seeing through the performance to the cold calculation underneath. "You gave me nothing. You took everything. My trust, my love, my sense of safety. You took it all and turned it into a transaction." Derek's mask slipped for just a second. She saw the real him, the one he usually kept hidden, cold, calculating, empty, completely devoid of empathy or love. Then he smiled, and it was terrifying in its cruelty. "Fine, keep your little court order. Keep your pathetic attempt at protection, But when you are on that table tomorrow morning, when something inevitably goes wrong, because that is what happens with your condition, and they ask me what to do if there is a choice, I will tell them the truth. Save the babies, not you. That is what any good father would do. He walked out, his lawyer following. The door slammed so hard the walls shook. Jenna turned to Claire, her face pale. He just threatened you. In front of witnesses. That is witness intimidation at minimum. Miles was already typing furiously on his phone. I am filing for an immediate restraining order. He will not be allowed anywhere near this floor. I am also requesting police presence during the surgery. But Claire knew the truth deep in her bones. Legal documents could not stop a man like Derek Ashford. Not when $8 million was on the line. Not when his entire life was collapsing around him. Desperate men were the most dangerous kind. That night, as the city lights flickered outside her window like distant stars, Claire whispered to her unborn daughters, her hands spread across her belly. I am going to fight for you, my loves. Even if it is the last thing I do, Mommy is not going to give up. I promise you that. I promise. And somewhere in the building, Dr. Sullivan was making a phone call to California to a man named Robert Callahan, telling him that his daughter was in danger, and if he wanted to meet her, he needed to come now. The surgery was scheduled for 6 a.m. Claire had not slept at all. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Derek's face from that afternoon, that cold smile, the way he looked at her like she was already dead, like she was a problem that had been solved. Dr. Sullivan came in at 5:30 to prep her, moving quietly through the pre-dawn darkness of the hospital room. How are you feeling? She asked, checking Claire's vitals one more time. Terrified, Claire admitted, her voice small in the quiet room. Completely terrified. Good, Dr. Sullivan said, her tone gentle but firm. Fear keeps you alert, and today you need to be very alert. You need to fight with everything you have. She leaned closer, lowering her voice even though they were alone. I spoke to the anesthesiologist personally, Dr. Richard Bennett. I explained the entire situation. He knows not to take any instructions from your husband, only from me. He has also been briefed by hospital security and legal. Claire nodded, tears streaming down her face, making tracks across her cheeks. Thank you for everything. Do not thank me yet, Dr. Sullivan said, squeezing her hand. Just survive. That is all I need you to do. Survive. At 5:55, they wheeled Claire out of her room toward the operating theater. The hallway lights were harsh and fluorescent, making everything look surreal, like a dream or a nightmare she could not wake up from. Nurses moved around her like synchronized dancers, their movements practiced and efficient, prepping instruments, checking monitors, double-checking charts. Derek was not allowed inside the operating room. Miles Crawford's restraining order had made sure of that. But he stood outside the observation window, arms crossed, watching. Vanessa stood beside him, perfectly dressed even at this hour in a cream-colored suit, her hair and makeup flawless. They looked like they were attending a business meeting, not waiting to see if Claire would live or die. The operating room was freezing, the air conditioning cranked up to preserve sterile conditions. Claire could see her breath, or maybe she was just hyperventilating. The lights were blinding, surgical lamps focused on the table where she lay, making her feel exposed and vulnerable. The anesthesiologist, Dr. Richard Bennett, placed the epidural with careful precision. You are going to feel pressure, but no pain, he explained, his voice calm and professional. You will be awake the whole time. That is important for monitoring your heart function. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you tell me immediately. Do not try to be brave. Just tell me. Okay, Claire whispered, her mouth dry despite the ice chips the nurse kept offering. Dr. Sullivan took her position at the head of the surgical team, her eyes meeting Claire's above the surgical mask. Let us bring your daughters into the world safely. You and them. That is the plan. Everyone survives today. The surgery began at exactly 6:03 a.m. Claire could feel tugging, pressure, the strange sensation of her body being opened but feeling disconnected from it, like it was happening to someone else. She focused on the ceiling tiles, counting them, naming them, anything to keep her mind occupied. Then she heard it, a cry, small, fragile, beautiful, the most perfect sound in the world. Baby, a nurse announced, her voice warm with joy. It is a girl, 730, 5 pounds, 2 ounces. Claire sobbed. Emma, 2 minutes later, another cry, slightly louder, more indignant. Baby B, another girl, 5 pounds even. Grace, Claire whispered through her tears. And then the third. This one took longer. Dr. Sullivan's hands moved carefully, gently, extracting the smallest baby from her position, tucked high under Claire's ribs. Baby C, girl, 4 pounds, 8 ounces. She is a fighter. Sophie, Claire said, her voice breaking with joy and relief. 3 daughters, 3 heartbeats, 3 miracles. The nurses worked quickly, cleaning the babies, checking their APGAR scores, wrapping them in warm blankets. Claire caught glimpses of them. Tiny fists, dark hair, perfect miniature humans. But then something changed. The monitor beside Claire started beeping faster, louder, more insistent. Blood pressure dropping, a nurse said sharply. 100/60, now 90/50. Dr. Sullivan's voice cut through the rising tension. Get me another unit of blood, type O negative, now. And call cardiology. I need a cardiac consult in here immediately. Yet Claire's vision started to blur at the edges. The lights above her seemed to flicker and pulse. Or maybe that was her heartbeat becoming irregular. She could hear voices, urgent and overlapping, but could not make out the words anymore. She is going into cardiac arrest, someone shouted. V-fib, another voice confirmed. Starting compressions. Charge the paddles to 200, Dr. Sullivan ordered, her voice cutting through the case with surgical precision. Clear? Claire's body arched off the table as electricity shot through her chest. Once, twice, 3 times. Still no rhythm. Again, 300 this time. Clear. Another shock. Claire's last thought before the darkness took her was simple and pure. I did it. My girls are safe. They are breathing. They are alive. That is enough. That has to be enough. Then nothing but darkness. Claire did not die that morning in the operating room. But for 9 long days, no one was completely sure she would live. She lay in the ICU on the 6th floor of Mount Sinai, hooked to machines that breathed for her, that kept her heart beating, that monitored every vital sign with precise digital readouts. Her body was fighting a battle no one could see, her damaged heart struggling to remember how to beat on its own, her lungs learning to breathe without the ventilator's mechanical assistance. The doctors induced a medical coma to give her body time to heal, to reduce the metabolic demands on her exhausted cardiovascular system. She floated in darkness, unaware of the war being fought over her body and the world above. Derek told everyone she was brain dead. He called a press conference in the hospital's media room on day 2, cameras flashing, reporters scribbling notes, microphones thrust forward to catch every carefully rehearsed word. My wife, Claire, gave everything to bring our daughters into this world, he said, his voice breaking on cue in exactly the right places. His eyes glistening with tears he could produce on command. She knew the risks. She knew her heart was failing, but she chose our children over herself. She is gone, but her legacy lives on in Emma, Grace, and Sophie. 3 beautiful angels that she died to bring us. Vanessa stood beside him, dabbing her eyes with a linen handkerchief, her black dress perfectly tailored, her grief performance worthy of an Oscar. The media ate it up like honey. Tragic widower, devoted father, American hero facing unimaginable loss with dignity. The New York Times ran the headline, Manhattan mother dies giving birth to triplets. Husband vows to honor her memory. But in the ICU, Nurse Rita Hayes knew the truth. She had been assigned to Claire's care for the night shift, and she saw the monitors. She read the charts, Claire's brain activity was normal, her EEG showing appropriate patterns. Her vitals were improving slowly but steadily. She was not dying. She was healing. Rita went to Dr. Sullivan on day 3, finding her in the doctor's lounge at 2 in the morning. He is lying. Mrs. Ashford is not brain dead. Her neurological function is completely normal. I know, Dr. Sullivan said quietly, exhaustion evident in every line of her face. But if we announce that publicly, if Derek knows she is going to wake up, he will try again. And next time we might not be able to stop him. So what do we do? Rita asked, frustrated and frightened. Dr. Sullivan looked out the window at the Manhattan skyline, the city that never slept glittering below them. We wait, we document everything, we gather evidence, and we pray that help arrives before he finds another way to get what he wants. Jenna Palmer refused to leave. She effectively moved into the ICU waiting room, her laptop open constantly, files and folders spread across 3 chairs, a small mountain of coffee cups accumulating on the table. She was building a case, brick by brick, document by document. Every phone call Derek made within hospital range that she could record, every visitor he brought, every lie he told to the press. On day 5, Vanessa moved into the Central Park West penthouse. She posted photos on Instagram with the triplets, carefully staged shots of her holding them in the expensive nursery, soft focus and perfect lighting. The caption read, "New beginnings, blessed to help this precious family heal. These angels deserve all the love in the world." The comments were full of praise and sympathy, and "You are a saint. Those babies are so lucky to have you. What a beautiful soul you have. Derek is blessed to have you in his time of grief." Jenna wanted to scream every time she saw another post, another performance, another lie accepted as truth. On day 7, Detective Frank Brennan from the NYPD Fraud Division showed up at the hospital, asking questions. He was in his late 40s, with graying hair, tired eyes that had seen every kind of scam this city could produce, and a bulldog determination to see justice done. "I read the file you sent me," he said to Jenna in the hospital cafeteria, his coffee untouched in front of him. "The journalist file, not the official police report. You have built a strong circumstantial case. The financial motive is clear. The forgery is provable. The recordings are damning. But without the victim's testimony, it stays circumstantial. A good defense lawyer could create reasonable doubt." "She is not dead," Jenna said fiercely. "She is going to wake up. And when she does, she will testify." "Then pray she does," Brennan replied, his expression grave. "Because if she does not, Derek Ashford walks free with $8 million and 3 babies who will never know their mother was murdered." On day 8, something extraordinary happened. An anonymous donation of $500,000 was made to the hospital, specifically earmarked for Claire Westwood's care. No expense was to be spared. The check was cashier's check, untraceable, delivered by messenger. The note attached was brief: "Spare no expense. Keep her alive. I am watching. R.P." Dr. Sullivan received a phone call that same afternoon on her private cell phone, a number very few people had. The voice was deep, authoritative, carrying the weight of someone used to being obeyed. "Dr. Sullivan, this is Robert Callahan. I believe you have been treating my daughter, Claire Westwood. I need to know her current condition." Dr. Sullivan's hands shook as she held the phone. She had heard of Robert Callahan. Everyone had. He was one of the 50 richest men in America, a self-made billionaire who had built his fortune in manufacturing and technology. Forbes estimated his worth at $4 billion. "Mr. Callahan, I can confirm I am treating a patient by that name, but federal privacy laws prevent me from—" "I know about HIPAA," Robert interrupted gently, "but I also know my daughter is in danger. I have been searching for her for 6 months. Her mother, Catherine, told me the truth before she died. I had a DNA test done using a sample from her medical records at New York Presbyterian from 2 years ago. She is my biological daughter, and I am coming to New York. Tonight, I will be there by morning. Just keep her alive until I arrive." The line went dead. Sullivan sat down heavily, her mind racing. If Robert Callahan was Claire's father, if he was coming here, then everything was about to change. Derek Ashford had no idea what was coming for him. On day 9, at 4:37 in the morning, Claire's eyes opened. The first thing Claire saw was white ceiling with acoustic tiles, white walls with monitoring equipment, white lights that hurt her eyes. For a moment, she thought she was dead, that this was some kind of limbo or purgatory. Then she felt pain, sharp and immediate, radiating from her chest, and she knew with absolute certainty that she was alive. Dead people do not feel pain. "Claire," a voice familiar, warm, female. She turned her head slowly, every movement taking enormous effort. Dr. Sullivan stood beside her bed, tears streaming down her face, her professional composure completely shattered. "Welcome back," the doctor whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You scared us. You scared us so badly." Claire tried to speak, but her throat was raw from the breathing tube that had only been removed an hour before. A nurse appeared immediately with a cup of water and a straw, helping her sip slowly. "My babies," Claire finally managed to croak out, her voice barely recognizable. "They are perfect," Sullivan said, smiling through her tears. "Healthy, beautiful, getting stronger every day in the NICU. They are waiting for you, Emma, Grace, and Sophie, your three miracles." Claire sobbed, relief flooding through her like a tidal wave, washing away some of the fear and pain. They were alive. She was alive. Against all odds, they had all survived. Then reality crashed back like cold water. "Derek, where is Derek?" Dr. Sullivan hesitated, exchanging a glance with Nurse Rita, who had appeared in the doorway. "He thinks you are still in a coma. We have not told him you are awake." Claire blinked, confused and trying to process through the fog of pain medication. "What? Why was he?" "Because we thought it was safer," Dr. Sullivan explained carefully, sitting in the chair beside the bed. "He has been making arrangements, financial and legal arrangements, assuming you would not recover. He held a press conference. He told the world you are brain dead. He moved his mistress into your home with your daughters. He has been planning to have you declared legally dead and take custody of the girls." Jenna appeared in the doorway, moving so fast she nearly knocked over a medical cart. "Claire, oh my God, Claire." She rushed to the bed, grabbing Claire's hand like a lifeline, tears streaming down her face. "But you scared the hell out of me. I thought I lost you. I thought he won." "I scared myself," Claire whispered, squeezing her friend's hand weakly. "What happened? How long have I been out?" "9 days, Jenna said, pulling up another chair. 9 days of hell. But we have been working. We have been documenting everything. Derek held a press conference. He told the media you died a hero. He moved Vanessa into the penthouse. He has been playing the grieving widow while planning to disappear with your daughters and the insurance money." Claire's heart rate monitor started beeping faster, her anxiety spiking. "We have to stop him. We have to protect the girls." "We will," Jenna assured her. "Miles Crawford has been working on the legal side nonstop. And there is something else. Someone else." Dr. Sullivan stepped forward again. "Claire, there is a man who has been searching for you. His name is Robert Callahan. He claims to be your biological father." Claire stared at her, certain she had misheard. "That is impossible. My father died when I was 5. I remember his funeral. I remember everything." "Your mother told you that," Dr. Sullivan said gently, her voice soft with understanding. "But it was not true. Robert has DNA evidence. He has been searching for you for months, and he is on his way here right now. His private plane landed at Teterboro an hour ago." Before Claire could process this impossible information, before she could ask any of the 1,000 questions flooding her mind, the door burst open with explosive force. Derek stood in the doorway, his face pale as death, his eyes wide with shock and something darker, something that looked like rage barely contained. "You are awake," he said, his voice flat and cold. Claire met his gaze, finding strength she did not know she still had. Surprise. For a long moment, no one moved. The room was frozen, a tableau of betrayal and survival. Then Derek lunged forward, his hands reaching for Claire, his face twisted with fury and desperation. "You ungrateful, you were supposed to." Security tackled him before he could reach the bed. 2 large men in hospital uniforms moving with practiced efficiency. They slammed him against the wall, restraining his arms behind his back. He screamed, thrashing like a wild animal. His careful mask finally shattered completely. "She is trying to ruin me. She is lying. She is insane. You cannot believe her." Detective Frank Brennan appeared in the doorway, handcuffs ready, his expression grim but satisfied. "Derek Ashford, you are under arrest for attempted murder, insurance fraud, forgery, conspiracy to commit fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder." Derek's face twisted with rage and disbelief. You cannot prove anything. You have nothing. This is all circumstantial. Brennan held up a phone, the screen showing text messages. Actually, we can prove quite a lot. Your girlfriend Vanessa started cooperating with us this morning. Funny how quickly love dies when facing 20 years in prison. She gave us everything. The forged documents, the bank records showing you paid the bribe to Dr. Ellen Price, the recordings of your conversations planning this whole thing. She sold you out to save herself. Completely. Derek's expression crumbled like a building collapsing. All the arrogance, all the confidence, all the cold calculation drained away, leaving only a desperate, cornered man. He looked at Claire, and for just a moment she saw something that might have been genuine emotion. Fear, regret, desperation. "Claire, please," he said, his voice breaking. "I made mistakes, terrible mistakes, but I love you. I love our daughters. Do not do this. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. I will get help. Please do not destroy our family." Claire's voice was steady when she spoke, stronger than she felt. "You wanted me dead. You planned it meticulously. You calculated the value of my life down to the dollar. You almost succeeded. Now you get to live with that knowledge for the rest of your life." They dragged him away, his shouts echoing down the hallway, gradually fading into silence. "This is not over. You will regret this. I will fight this. I have rights." When the room was finally quiet again, when the echoes of his rage had faded, Claire collapsed back against the pillows, completely exhausted. Her whole body shook with delayed reaction, with the adrenaline crash, with the overwhelming reality of what had just happened. Jenna squeezed her hand so hard it hurt. "You did it. You survived. You actually survived." But Claire knew deep in her bones that the fight was not over yet, not by a long shot. Robert Callahan arrived at Mount Sinai Hospital at 10 in the morning, exactly 30 minutes after Derek's arrest. He was tall, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He moved with the quiet confidence of a man who had built empires from nothing, who had negotiated billion-dollar deals and come out on top. But when he entered Claire's hospital room, escorted by Dr. Sullivan and flanked by 2 lawyers and a private security guard, his composure cracked like ice breaking. "Claire," he said, his voice breaking on her name. She looked at him, this stranger who claimed to be her father, studying his face for any trace of familiarity. She saw it in his eyes. They were her eyes, the same shade of gray-green, the same shape, the same way they crinkled at the corners. "Why now?" she asked, her voice hoarse but firm. "If you are really my father, where have you been my whole life? Why did you let me grow up thinking you were dead?" Robert sat down slowly in the chair beside her bed, as if his legs could not hold him anymore. He looked older suddenly, the weight of decades pressing down on him. "Your mother, Catherine, she was the love of my life. We met in college at Stanford. I was nobody then, just a kid from Pittsburgh with big dreams and no money. Her family, they were old money, Boston elite going back to the Mayflower. They did not approve of me, not even close." He pulled out a faded photograph from his wallet, worn at the edges from being handled over the years, a young woman with Claire's eyes and smile, laughing beside a young man who looked like Robert, but with longer hair and fewer lines on his face. When she got pregnant, her parents gave her an ultimatum. Leave me and they would support her and the baby. Stay with me and they would disown her completely. Cut off all financial support. Erase her from the family. Claire's throat tightened as she took the photograph with trembling hands. "She chose them. She chose you," Robert corrected gently. "She told me she had a miscarriage. I believed her because I wanted to believe her, because I could not imagine she would lie about something like that. She married another man 3 months later, someone her family approved of, Jonathan Westwood, a lawyer from their social circle. She raised you as his daughter. I never knew you existed until 6 months ago. How did you find out?" Robert's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "She died last year, pancreatic cancer. It was quick, just 6 weeks from diagnosis to the end. Before she passed, she wrote me a letter. She had her lawyer deliver it after her death. In it, she confessed everything. Told me about you, told me how much she regretted lying, told me she had watched my career from a distance, read every article, followed every acquisition. She was proud of what I had built, but she was too afraid to reach out, too ashamed of the lies she had perpetuated. He handed Claire an envelope, yellowed with age, the handwriting elegant and feminine. This is the letter. I have read it 1,000 times. She gave me your birth date, the hospital, everything I needed to find you. I hired investigators. It took months, but they tracked you down here in New York. And then I learned what was happening, what your husband was planning. I could not let history repeat itself. I could not lose another chance to know my daughter. He pulled out another document, this one crisp and official. I had a DNA test done. I used a sample from your medical records at New York Presbyterian from 2 years ago when you had that appendectomy. The hospital keeps samples on file. It is not entirely legal how I obtained it, but I do not care. 99.9% match. You are my daughter, Claire, my blood, my family. Claire stared at the DNA report, the scientific proof of what her heart was already beginning to accept. Tears blurred the words, the percentage and genetic markers swimming together. Why did you wait? Why did you not come sooner? Because I was a coward, Robert admitted, his voice raw with honesty. I was afraid you would hate me, afraid I had no right to disrupt your life after being absent for 28 years, afraid that showing up would cause more harm than good. But when I learned you were in danger, when I learned what Derek was planning, when I got the call from Dr. Sullivan that you might not survive, I realized that fear was selfish, that you deserve to know the truth, that you deserve to know you have a father who never stopped wondering about you. Claire looked at this man, this father she never knew existed. Despite everything, despite the years of absence and lies and missed moments, she felt something shift inside her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of understanding, the start of something that might become love. What happens now? She asked quietly. Robert's expression hardened. The grieving father replaced by the billionaire businessman who had crushed competitors and built an empire. Now we make Derek Ashford pay for what he did to you. Every cent he tried to steal, every moment of suffering he caused, every tear you shed, he will spend the next 25 years remembering the woman he underestimated. He stood, straightening his suit jacket. I have already retained the best criminal prosecution team in the state. I have investigators gathering every shred of evidence. I have forensic accountants tracing every dollar Derek stole or tried to steal. And I have already filed paperwork to establish legal guardianship of your daughters, with you as their primary parent and me as their grandfather and legal protector. You did all that in one night, Claire asked. Amazed? Robert smiled, and she saw where she got her own stubborn determination. When you have money and motivation, you can accomplish a lot very quickly. Derek Ashford thought he could erase you. He forgot that some families do not give up, even when they have been separated for decades. For the first time since waking up, Claire smiled, really smiled. Thank you, she whispered. Do not thank me, Robert said, leaning down to kiss her forehead gently, the way a father should. Just focus on getting strong. Focus on your daughters. Let me handle the rest. That is what fathers do, even ones who show up late. The trial began 6 months later in Manhattan criminal court. By then, Claire had recovered enough to walk into the courtroom on her own 2 feet, though she still tired easily and had to take medication for her heart 3 times a day. She wore a simple navy dress that Jenna had helped her pick out, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, the triplets' initials engraved on a silver necklace around her neck. Emma, Grace, Sophie, her 3 reasons for surviving. The courtroom was packed beyond capacity. Reporters lined the back row 3 deep, photographers jockeying for position. Court officers had to turn people away at the door. The case had captured national attention. Wall Street husband tried to murder wife for insurance money was the headline that had run in every major newspaper. Derek sat at the defense table, looking nothing like the confident businessman who had once ruled boardrooms. He had lost weight, his expensive suit hanging loose on his frame. His hair was graying at the temples. His hands shook slightly when he picked up his water glass. He looked like what he was, a desperate man facing the ruins of his life. His lawyer, Gregory Hale, had been replaced by a public defender after Derek's assets were frozen pending the criminal investigation. The new attorney, a tired-looking woman named Sarah Jenkins, was doing her best with an impossible case. The prosecutor, Angela Morrison, was a former Marine-turned-lawyer with a reputation for never losing financial fraud cases. She laid out the case with military precision, each piece of evidence building on the last like bricks in an impenetrable wall. The forged insurance documents, with handwriting analysis showing Derek had practiced Claire's signature dozens of times before forging the final version. The recorded phone calls between Derek and Vanessa, discussing the plan in explicit detail. The financial records showing Derek's firm was $12 million in debt and facing SEC investigation. The hospital security footage showing Derek trying to bribe Dr. Ellen Price to reduce Claire's life support. Vanessa's testimony, delivered via video from the federal prison, where she was serving her own 7-year sentence for fraud and conspiracy. When it was Claire's turn to testify, the courtroom went completely silent. Every spectator, every reporter, every court officer focused entirely on her. She walked to the witness stand on steady legs, placed her hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mrs. Ashford, Angela Morrison began gently, "Can you tell the jury what happened on the night before your surgery?" Claire took a breath, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. "I overheard my husband on the phone. He was on speakerphone in the next room. He did not know I could hear. He said that if I did not survive the delivery, he would receive $8 million from a life insurance policy. He said the babies would be his, and he and Vanessa would be free to start their life together. He said, and I quote, 'No more stress, no more complications, just clean money and a fresh start.' And how did that make you feel? Terrified, betrayed. I realized he was planning my death the way most people plan a vacation, with attention to detail and anticipation of the outcome." Sarah Jenkins, the defense attorney, stood for cross-examination. "Mrs. Ashford, is it not true that you were under extreme physical and emotional stress at that time, pregnant with triplets, suffering from a serious heart condition, taking multiple medications? Is it not possible you misheard or misunderstood what your husband said?" Claire met the lawyer's eyes steadily. "I have asked myself that same question 1,000 times, hoping I was wrong, praying I had misunderstood. But then I followed him. I saw him with Vanessa. I heard them planning together. And then he tried to have me declared brain dead while I was still alive. And then he tried to have hospital staff reduce my life support. Those are not misunderstandings. Those are actions." The defense tried to paint Claire as mentally unstable, as suffering from postpartum psychosis even though the babies had not been born yet. But the evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, damning. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood and read the verdict in a clear, firm voice. "On the count of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty." Derek's face went white as snow. "On the count of insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty." His lawyer slumped in her chair, knowing it was over. "On the count of forgery, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty on all 12 counts." Derek's hands gripped the table so hard his knuckles turned white. A sound came from his throat, half sob, half moan. The judge, a stern woman named Patricia Brennan, looked at Derek with unconcealed disgust. "Mr. Ashford, you are hereby sentenced to 25 years in a state correctional facility with no possibility of parole. You will also pay restitution in the amount of $8 million plus interest, and you permanently forfeit all parental rights to your 3 children." As they led him away in handcuffs, Derek turned to Claire one last time. Their eyes met across the courtroom. "I hope you are happy," he said, his voice bitter. "I hope this was worth destroying me." Claire did not respond. She simply stood, gathered her things, and walked out of the courtroom with her head high. Jenna and Robert waited for her in the hallway, along with Dr. Sullivan and Miles Crawford. They had become her new family, forged in crisis, bound by loyalty. "It is over," Jenna said, hugging her tightly. "No," Claire replied, looking out the courthouse windows at the city beyond. "Now it begins." 2 years later, Claire stood in her art gallery in Chelsea, sunlight streaming through the tall windows, watching her daughters play in the space she had created for them in the back room. Emma was carefully arranging toy blocks by color and size, her analytical mind already evident at age 2. Grace was drawing pictures of flowers with crayons, her creativity blooming. Sophie was trying to eat a crayon, her determination to experience everything evident. The gallery was small but elegant, occupying a renovated warehouse space with exposed brick and polished concrete floors. It was funded by Robert and filled with work from emerging artists, many of them women who had survived domestic violence or other traumas. Claire had named it Catherine's Light, after her mother. It was her way of honoring the woman who had made impossible choices to protect her, even if those choices had caused pain. The opening exhibition had been a success. Art critics from the Times and the New Yorker had written glowing reviews. Collectors were starting to pay attention. But more importantly, the gallery had become a community space, a place where survivors could express their stories through art, could transform pain into beauty. Robert visited every weekend without fail. He had become Papa Rob to the girls, the grandfather they adored with complete devotion. He bought them too many toys, read them too many stories, spoiled them shamelessly, and loved them with the fierce devotion of a man making up for 30 lost years. He had also established trust funds for each girl, ensuring they would never have to depend on a man for financial security the way Claire had. He had taught Claire how to manage money, how to invest, how to build her own wealth. Never be financially dependent, he told her repeatedly. Money is not just about comfort, it is about freedom and choices. Jenna had won a Pulitzer Prize for her investigative series on financial fraud and domestic abuse, a multi-part investigation that had started with a Claire's case and expanded to expose a network of similar crimes across the country. She used her platform to advocate for stronger laws protecting women in vulnerable situations. She visited the gallery often, always bringing coffee and the latest gossip. Still Claire's fiercest protector and best friend. Dr. Sullivan had been promoted to chief of obstetrics at Mount Sinai. She and Claire had become close friends beyond their doctor-patient relationship. They had lunch once a month, sometimes talking about everything except that terrible night, sometimes talking about nothing but that night, because talking about it made it smaller, less powerful, less able to haunt them. Claire's life was not perfect. She still had nightmares where she was back on that operating table, back in Derek's apartment, back in that moment of helpless terror. She still flinched when men raised their voices unexpectedly. She still checked the locks on her doors twice before bed every night. She saw a therapist weekly, working through the PTSD, the trust issues, the deep wounds that do not heal quickly. But she was healing, slowly, steadily, imperfectly, but genuinely. One afternoon in early autumn, a man walked into the gallery just as she was about to close. He was tall, with kind eyes, in his early 40s, wearing a casual blazer and jeans. Claire recognized him immediately. Bradley Morse, Derek's former business partner. The one who had testified against Derek at trial, who had helped the prosecution understand the financial fraud. "I hope I am not intruding," Bradley said, hesitating just inside the door. "I just wanted to say I am sorry. I should have seen what Derek was doing. I should have stopped him. I ignored the signs because it was easier, because confronting him would have meant admitting I had partnered with a monster. I will regret that for the rest of my life." Claire studied him carefully. Looking for signs of deception or manipulation, she found only genuine remorse and guilt. "You testified. That took courage." "It took guilt," Bradley corrected honestly. "Guilt that I did not speak up sooner. Guilt that my silence almost cost you your life. I do not expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I am sorry." There was a long pause filled with the ambient sounds of the city outside. Then Claire said, "Would you like to see the gallery? See what I have built from the ashes?" Bradley smiled, relief evident on his face. "I would like that very much." They walked through the space, talking about art, about New York, about the process of rebuilding after betrayal, about second chances and redemption. It was not a date. It was not a promise of anything. It was just two people, both scarred by the same man's selfishness, trying to find their way forward in a world that had proven itself capable of both terrible cruelty and unexpected kindness. When he left an hour later, Claire felt something she had not felt in a long time. Not love, not yet, maybe not ever, with him specifically, but possibility. The possibility that she might someday be ready to trust again, that her life might include companionship, maybe even romance, when she was ready, that Derek had not stolen that from her permanently. That evening, she tucked her daughters into bed in their apartment, a smaller place than the penthouse but filled with warmth and safety. Emma asked the question Claire had been dreading. Mama, where is Daddy? Claire had promised herself from the beginning that she would always tell them the truth, age appropriately but honestly. Daddy made some very bad choices. He hurt people. He hurt Mommy. So he has to stay in a place called prison for a very long time, where people who make bad choices have to go to think about what they did. Will he come back? Grace asked, her young face worried. No, sweetheart, he will not. But that is okay because we have each other. We have Papa Rob. We have Aunt Jenna. We have Dr. Maggie. We have lots of people who love us very much. Sophie, the youngest, hugged Claire tight with all her small strength. It is okay, Mama. We have you. That is enough. Claire kissed their foreheads, breathing in the sweet smell of baby shampoo and innocence, fighting back tears of both sadness and joy. You will always have me, my loves. Always. I promise you that. After they fell asleep, she walked out onto the small balcony of her apartment, overlooking a quieter part of the city than the penthouse had shown. The lights still twinkled like stars, but from here they seemed warmer, more welcoming, less indifferent to human suffering. She thought about everything she had survived: the betrayal, the surgery, the coma, the trial, the slow, difficult process of rebuilding a life from fragments and ashes. People often asked her if she had forgiven Derek. Reporters, especially, wanted that neat narrative arc, that redemption story. The answer was complicated, nuanced, unsatisfying to those who wanted simple morality tales. She did not forgive him for what he did. The planning, the coldness, the calculated cruelty of treating her life as a financial transaction, that was unforgivable. But she had forgiven herself for loving him, for trusting him, for not seeing the warning signs sooner, for believing in the man she thought he was rather than the man he actually was. That forgiveness had been harder to achieve than any other part of her healing. She had learned that survival was not just about staying alive, though that was important. It was about reclaiming joy, about building a life that meant something beyond just existing, about showing her daughters that even when the world tries to break you, even when someone you love betrays you in the deepest possible way, you can put yourself back together. Maybe not the same as before, maybe with cracks that show, but whole nonetheless. Claire Westwood had been erased once, reduced to a line item in a financial scheme, stripped of her humanity and autonomy, but she had risen from those ashes stronger and wiser, scarred but unbroken. As the city lights glowed beneath her balcony and the autumn wind carried the promise of change, she whispered to the night, to her mother's memory, to whatever force had kept her alive when death seemed certain. They tried to bury me. They forgot I had roots. They forgot I was a seed, not a corpse. And somewhere in the darkness, in the space between memory and hope, she felt her mother's presence, proud and loving, whispering back, "You did good, my girl. You survived. You built something beautiful. You won." The fight was over. The healing continued. And for the first time in years, Claire Westwood was not just surviving. She was living, truly, fully, messily, beautifully living. And that, she realized, was the greatest revenge of all.